Welcome back to On the Light. I'm your host, Susan Johnson. In today's episode, Prashantji continues to explain the spiritual heart of Indian classical music, or Sangeet, and its profound relationship to yoga and devotion. Prashantji draws important distinctions between Indian classical music and Western music, emphasizing that Sangeet was never meant to be mere performance or entertainment, but a sacred practice rooted in eternal culture and devotion to the divine. Please enjoy this rich and contemplative episode of On the Light. Today we're going to continue our discussion on Sangeet. And for the listeners, this question came for me after reading an article from volume 31, number 3, 2025 of Yoga Rahasya. Now, it actually wasn't an article, it was a talk that Prashantji gave, which needed to be translated and then transcribed. I just want to read one part of it, which struck me, and I have a question about it. It says, "The moment at which the mind becomes unattached, unscathed, pure, at that very moment, the tambura of the mind no longer needs to be tuned. What has happened is that our mind, rid of its impurities, its desires, its distractions, begins to attune itself, establishing a concordance with that inner tambura which resonates always already with the accordant I myself. Soham Nada." I'm curious if you could talk more about that tambura of the mind.
Okay, so let me first link today's session with the previous session that we had last week.
Okay.
See, we have Indian classical music, and today we something identifies Western classical music.
Mm-hmm.
The classical music might be in different continents and countries. They would say it is classical music of their country. But the big difference is that Indian classical music has its chord with our eternal culture. Just as yoga, all of you know, is a spiritual subject, the Sangeet music, the Sangeet, that is Indian Bharatiya Sangeet, is equally spiritual. As a matter of fact, it has its own yoga. Sangeet itself has its own yoga. And therefore, we can understand the spiritual background, spiritual base, Adhyatmic base for the Sangeet, the Bharatiya Sangeet, which today is known as Indian classical music. And therefore, as yoga has something called as Nada Yoga, the Sangeet can culminate into a yoga of its own kind, whereby its yoga means to unite finite self with the universal self, to unite with the divinity. So it has its own yoga, and it is equally spiritual, or perhaps more easily accessible spirituality through music. It's a long cut through yoga that we are all aware of, which we say Patanjali Yoga, etc., traditional Patanjali Yoga. Compared to that, I concede that music has a short and sweet cut to the goal of yoga, which is also the goal of Patanjali Yoga or Dhyana Yoga, Abhyasa Yoga. It has more peace because we all believe yoga, the path of yoga that we have chosen, it's a difficult path. It requires uh, very severe discipline and it requires intense practices, which Patanjali himself has expressly said in the sutra Tivra Samveganam Asanaha in the first chapter. And then Patanjali also indirectly hints that there is a sweet cut and a shortcut to the ultimate yoga, culminating yoga by Ishvara Pranidhana. So, Ishvara Pranidhana is a shorter corridor, sweeter corridor than rigorous practice of yoga and discipline of yoga. And in Bharatiya Sangeet, in our Sangeet, that is what is the core aspect that the Sangeet is a devotion for divinity. It is not an art as it is understood today. Music is recognized as art, fine art, but in classical form, music was not considered as an art. It was considered as yoga. It was considered as devotion, bhakti, and a corridor to divinity. It is in the later period that music became art. So I might say at this that Western music, it is for whom? Western classical music is for whom? It is for the mortals, human beings, mortals, and for their joy of the auditory system. The music has to be heard, enjoyed, relished, and have elation, delight, etc. So it is for mortal ears. The art form of the music is for mortal ears. Whereas Indian music, if you go to its pristine stage and state, it is not to please the mortal ears and the mind behind the mortal ears. So there are instances where the Indian classical form of music has appeal for even life forms, not necessarily human beings. Now you can't have a Western music concert for in a zoo where there are animals. So you cannot have Western music concert for animals. Whereas Bharatiya Sangeet is for botanical life, biological life, every kind of life. And it is historically proved that even the nature, it is for nature. Therefore, we have ragas, which are melody patterns and melody forms, which can touch the nature itself. For instance, we have a raga called Deepaka. Deepaka means lamp. And that raga can change the nature to very hot conditions. Because you know the lamp contains fire. There is no lamp without fire. Fire is not without temperatures. Fire is not without burning temperatures. And there are ragas which are related to nature. The rag such as Malhar is related to rain gods and the rain factor in the nature. So with that raga, there are instances that the rains are evoked. We have ragas which are related to the seasons. We have 6 seasons in Bharatavarsha. And these 6 seasons, there are ragas which are related to 6 seasons. The ragas are related to all kinds of nature, the 5 elements, Prithvi, Ap, Tej, Vayu, Akash. And that's how Bharatiya Sangeet has come from cosmological unfoldment.
Mm.
Because the cosmological unfoldment is based on certain metaphysical principles and elemental principles. And therefore, there is a very strong bond between the Bharatiya Sangeet and very nature. Bharatiya Sangeet and sentient nature, the so-called insentient nature as well. So that's how we have to look at the Bharatiya Sangeet. Then the Bharatiya Sangeet in its pristine form, as I just now said, it was not a performing art at all. It was not to entertain the human beings. It was to evoke a spiritual experience in human beings and all forms of life, and even the nature.
Mhm.
So therefore I won't endorse with the idea that it should be called as Indian music. It
Mhm.
is not music. Music is a fine art. Music is an art. And Sangeet is not an art. It is a way to express the, the love and bhakti, devotion towards the divinity. Now, this Sangeet, as I said in my last talk, has its roots in one of the 4 Upavedas, the sub-Vedas, secondary Vedas. Rig Ved, Yajurved, Samaved, Atharvaved are the 4 major Vedas, as all of you are aware of it. The Samaveda has a unique place because the way the Samaveda is chanted has exalted musicality compared to other Vedas. There are ecstatic expressions, like we say ha, hu, etc., which are ecstatic expressions. They come in Samaveda. So, one who is chanting Samaveda gets, and then he starts singing ha, ha, hu, etc. And you can get some idea of this if you turn to one of the Samavedic Upanishads, which is major Upanishad called Chandogya Upanishad. In Chandogya Upanishad, which is a Samavedic Upanishad, you will come across certain expressions, exclamations of joy, delight, ecstasy. That they don't have literal meaning, but they are expressions. They are expressions of delight, ecstasy, bliss, happiness, etc. Um, so the Samaveda has a sub-Veda, which is called Gandharva Veda. The Gandharvas are the celestial musicians. The Gandharvas are celestial vocal musicians. As I said in the last session, the Kinnaras are celestial instrumentalists. They are instrumental musicians. They are called kinnars. And apsaras, damsels, rendered as damsels, are celestial dancers. So I want you to recall that I gave the definition of Sangeet in my last talk, that Sangeet is not just music. Sangeet is instrumental form of Sangeet, vocal form of Sangeet, and even dance. Our classical dance, such as Kathak of North India, Bharatanatyam of the South India. There are various forms of dances in India, uh, like Manipur style of dance, Manipur school of dance, Odishi school of dance, Mohini Attam school of dance, Kathakali school of dance. These are all classical forms of our dance, which is also music. It is not music because there is a background of music. It is inherently music. Our dance is inherently music, not because the accompanying instruments are there and the accompaniments are all musical instruments. That is not the reason why it is counted as Sangeet. So the like vocalist sings in praise, the instrumentalist also expresses through the languageless language, which is music. He expresses the devotion. The dancer expresses the devotion through the gestures and through the compositions on which the dance is based. And that's why our dance performance were not taking place in auditorium. The place for dance was temples and shrines. So the dance was taking place in shrines. Vocal music also, we did not have concert halls thousands of years ago, and 5,000 years ago, and 10,000 years ago. We did not have recreation centers and entertainment centers. If you go to the lore or something like 10,000 years back, you can't imagine there were auditoriums and there were theaters. This is modern development that today we have theaters, we have amphitheaters, we have auditoriums, we have concert halls, we have opera halls, etc. Indian music can be traced far before with the advent of these entertainment centers. And that is why I'm telling you, in the Bharatiya Shastriya Sangeet is not for entertainment. It was all taking place under the auspices of divine presence, and it was service to divinity. Music was there to in service of divinity, and the divinity doesn't require entertainment like we mortals require. We get our enjoyment during the weekends. We want the time for our enjoyment. We want some time for recreation. The divinity doesn't need that. Divinity is not like us.
Mhm.
And therefore, it doesn't need entertainment. Divinity doesn't need at all, but it is devotees who need.
Mhm.
Devotees who need a connect with divinity through the channel of Sangeet.
Mm.
So in classical times, this was a temple business. It was a temple organization of so-called concerts of music, concerts of vocal music, instrumental music, and dance music. Because we cannot even imagine that there were auditoriums, etc., hundreds of thousands of years back. This Bharatiya Sangeet is age old because it has roots in Samaveda, which is timeless and which is there from time without beginning. It's with the launch of creation itself, the Vedas have come, Upavedas have come. So again, I reiterate, it is not entertainment. It is the finite individual self to unite with the universal self. That is what the yoga is. One of the definitions of yoga, perhaps you are all aware of that. Sanyogo yoga ityukto jivatma paramatmanaha. Sanyoga, union between whom? Jivatma Paramatma, finite self, self and infinite self. So the The union of the finite with the infinite self is yoga. This is the definition in the text and the tradition of yoga. So the devotee was trying to connect with the divinity. Divinity did not need all this. Divinity doesn't need anything. The divinity is inherently resourceful for whatever divinity might need. It doesn't have to go to some place to get something. It has inherently everything available what it needs. As a matter of fact, being a metaphysical entity, it needs nothing, but the universe needs it. The creation needs it. And of course, in our metaphysics and cosmology, he does create universe. He does create the universe because there has to be universe, otherwise his glory will not be at all proved. How the omnipotence of your divinity, omniscience of your divinity, omnipresence of divinity will be postulated with no creation at all, no phenomenal creation. So it's a game, it's a sport. The whole creation is for the it's a sport of divinity. Just as children play with toys and we play with something, we want some kind of play, something to play. So we play with something. So divinity as a conscious principle plays, and his play is to create the universe. Create the universe, generate the universe, and absorb the universe. So during the deluge, the creation is taken in by him. And during the creation phase, it is generated from him. That is our cosmology. Upanishads beautifully describe this with the analogy of spider. Spider. The spider turns out the web from its saliva and stays in that net which it has weaved out of its saliva. It stays in it. It lives in it. And ultimately, it absorbs that spider web. So spider turns out the web, spider stays in web, and the spider absorbs the web finally. Similarly, Mundaka Upanishad describes this dimension of creation, that the creation ensues from him like a spider. And then divinity stays in the web of the creation, like the spider lives in the web, stays in the web. And then finally, divinity absorbs the whole web of universe, which is called deluge. So that's a Vedantic point of view about creation. So we don't believe God creates, God becomes.
Hmm.
God becomes creation. And it is his parts. As long as he wants, it is there. Where he wants to dismantle, he reabsorbs, he takes into him. So the divinity doesn't need anything. Only mysticism says that divinity has one hunger and one thirst. Very, very, very strong hunger and very, very, very strong thirst. That is, he wants the devotees. Devotees are his weakness.
Hmm.
He has thirst for devotion, devotees, devotion. He has hunger for the devotion of the devotees. This is what the mysticism of our religious consciousness says. Otherwise, he doesn't need anything. But he is damn thirsty without devotion of the devotee. He is damn hungry without the devotion of the devotee. This is what mysticism of religious consciousness diverges, but that's a mysticism. Um, so the point is, the music, rather the Bharatiya Sangeet, should not be taken to understand as we experience today. Today, we have artists who perform Indian classical music. They perform for appeasement of the audience. They don't perform for their self content by subserving divinity. These are all performing artists. They take remuneration, they take concert fees, and they want to give concerts for that. They want to give concerts for recognition, name, fame, money, recognition, status. They don't sing for themselves. Themselves means the metaphysical self within, which I told you in the last session. Haridas was not a performing artist. He was singing for his beloved divinity. So that's how the pristine Shastriya Sangeet is. And today's music has drifted far away from that. Has got in. So is the case of yoga. Today, the yoga that we have in the world is highly contaminated. People are doing yoga for their personal good, selfish good, good for their mortal good, good for their mortal beings, good for their wellness and well-being in the mundane worldly affairs. Yoga is not done for the sake of yoga. It is practiced as a kind of something for lifestyle so that your life is better. So to improve your life, today yoga is practiced all over the world. But that's not how original yoga was there or is there, wherever it might be there. So it transcends the materiality. You take any maestro in Indian music, they don't transcend materiality. They want people around. They want people who acknowledge their skills, their performance. They want audience which is who have appeal for their music, and therefore they become their fans. All the music artists have their fans. While someone like Haridas was not collecting fans. So his music was directly connected to divinity. Anyway, a little idea I've given for one to have a thought process as to what Shastriya Sangeet might be, which is called Indian classical music, unfortunately.
Mm.
Now, you had the question about the Tanpura.
Mhm.
The music always requires a melody at background and melody generated. The drone instrument is something which is played for every composition of classical music. So that's called Tanpura. And there is a great mystery in Tanpura itself. That instrument is called Tanpura, which is a drone instrument, which are four strings or five strings and sometimes more strings. Now, when the Tanpura is tuned perfectly, it is tuned to two notes, only two notes. It is tuned to only two notes. The first note and the fourth or fifth note. So the four strings are tuned to only first note or fourth note and fifth note. But when it is plucked, if it is properly tuned, it turns out a particular note, which is the third note. None of the strings are tuned to third note. But the combined effect, that is the nada, principle of nada, the combined effect of plucking the four strings, which has only two notes, the note number 1 or note number 4 or 5. Some ragas have 4, some ragas have fifth note. Now, where is the third note? Third note is not there. So, third note is the effect when the drone instrument is properly tuned. And it resounds with one note to which none of the strings are tuned. This is the mysticism. None of the strings of the instrument are tuned. That is called Gandhara. So, what will emanate is the Gandhara, which is the third note in our scale of mysticism. There's a combined effect of the Tanpura being plucked. And then it testifies that the Tanpura is perfectly tuned. Resonate by plucking the 4 or 5 strings, then the Tanpura is not properly tuned. So that Tanpura is Madhyam, Pancham. But the Gandhar has to emanate. Shadja is the first note of the 7. Pancham is the fifth note. Pancham itself 5. It means 5. So it's the fifth note. In Sanskrit, Pancham comes for 5, number 5. So it's the fifth note. Now, it resonates with third note. This is the marvel of what we call as Shruti. The Sapta Swara, the 7 notes of music. The blend turns out something else. Now, for one to understand, little to demystify this, I have used this analogy many times in my teachings. We all relish a cup of tea. Some people call it a celestial beverage, hot beverage. So the gustatory organ relishes and we relish a cup of tea. Now, the cup of tea, the ingredients, what are the ingredients? Water, which has no taste. Milk has almost no taste. Tea leaves has bitter taste, absolutely bitter, strongly bitter taste. And sugar is strongly sweet. But when they come as a compound, they come together to prepare a compound. The tea is not tasteless. Tea is not bitter. Tea is neither sweet. It has its unique flavor. Tea has a unique flavor. You can't say it is like sugar. You don't say tea is like jaggery. You don't say tea is like honey, which are sweetening agents. Nor the tea is bitter, like coffee seeds, roasted coffee seeds, or tea leaves. It is not even bitter. Or it is not even tasteless like water and milk. It turns out altogether new taste. And similarly, the compound of the ingredients of tea turn out that exquisite blend. So also is the case of coffee. Many people are fond of coffee. Ingredients of coffee don't have any flavor of the taste that you get from a cup of coffee. Unless it's the compound, you don't get the taste of the flavor of the taste of coffee. You can chew sugar, you can take some milk, you can take some water, you can take some coffee powder. None of them are relishable. But when they come together, there is enormous relish. That's the yoga. A coming together of things which turns out a marvel is called yoga. Otherwise, it can be cocktail, it can be mixture, etc., etc.
Mhm.
So these the notes of raga have a combined effect. Most of you know that ragas have a scale, but not merely scale, but melody forms. Any raga has a particular scale. So some notes are not there out of seven. Some notes are there. Some notes are major notes. Some notes are secondary notes. But the melody that is turned out, melody that is turned out is a compound. So although Tanpura might be tuned to only two notes, it produces third note. This is the intriguing aspect. So Tanpura is a drone instrument. So when a musician is playing his musician, you can all say that he gets engrossed into his music. He should get engrossed into his music. He should dissolve into his music. But understand, if the drone instrument for any reason has gone out of tune, artist will immediately identify it. He can't say, "Oh, I did not notice it. I was absorbed in my music. I did not take note of drone instrument going out of order or out of tune." No, that doesn't happen. That's why it's called drone instrument. So musician is more connected to the drone instrument while he's performing music. His music is based on the structure. His music is suprastructure over the melody of the drone instrument. So it is so fundamental, so foundational that artists cannot say that I did not take cognizance of the drone instrument Tanpura. Little fault there will be immediately noticed by the musician. Howsoever, he is engrossed in his own music. That will be jarring and he will immediately be disturbed and he will tune the tanpura properly and then proceed. So that's a drone instrument, it's not just a background instrument.
Mm.
It is not just one of the instruments which is insignificant, just being at the background. It creates the field for music. It creates the foreground for music, background for music, atmosphere for music. It has such an enormous contribution. So that is the drone instrument. Now, we have this in our human system, we have a drone constantly vibrating, revibrating. That is the Om in the heart. It is not that Om we only chant either orally or silently or mentally. The Om is revibrating in the heart according to the mysticism. The heart doesn't have just vascular system, the arteries and veins, but the heart has Om. And this Om is constantly going on in the heart. That is why in yoga also we have a set of practice called Soham practice, Soham sadhana. Soham means I am that. Sa aham. Sa means that, divinity. Aham means me. Soham, I am that. Like you are familiar with that Upanishadic statement, thou that art, tat tvamasi, you are that, thou that art.
Mhm.
So the Om in the mysticism is constantly resounding within us. And if you look into my Yoga Sutra book, where I've described the Kevala Kumbhaka, look at the part of Keval Kumbhaka, which comes in second chapter towards the end, just before Pratyahar Sutra and effect of Pranayam Sutra. I have described the Kevala Kumbhaka. So the inhalation sound, listen to this. Why the soham? So means that, aham means me. Now this is not only in the language. Sanskrit says, like you say that in English, and me. Now that and me has no relationship. That is that, and me is me. But understand this, the mysticism of yoga, uh, the aham, which is the finite self, and the sa, that, which is universal self. It is how does it resound within you? Now anybody can check and test this. Inhalation sound is sa. Exhalation sound is hum. Inhalation sound is sa. You take an inhalation, it is sa inhalation, sa, sa. And exhalation is hum, hum, hum. So the so hum, in that, the sa is inhalative and hum is exhalative. So sa hum becomes so hum.
Mhm.
So that's the very sound of our breath. Inhalative breath, as I've said sometimes, it has hissing sound, and exhalation has humming sound. So hissing sound, even in English, why hissing sound you all call it? In hiss, there is sir.
Mhm.
The cobra or snake have hissing sound. If there is a cobra or snake in your room, you don't see the snake, you identify with the sound, with its breath. That's why we call it hissing sound. The cobra or snake have a hissing sound of their breath. The point is, inhalative sound is sir, exhalative sound is hum, and therefore it becomes sir hum, and therefore it is so hum.
Mhm.
So how our very breath or the prana is related to and connected to divinity. So we have the drone instrument going on constantly, whether you are in state of a wakeful state or dreamy state or dormant state or comatose or super conscious state. That will be constantly there. So we have a drone within. And I have explained the Kevala Kumbhaka there, which you should read so that I don't have to explain. If you need that, I will explain maybe in next session. So I won't explain today. I would expect all of you to read how Kevala Kumbhaka is related to Sa, O, Ha, Ma, four sounds. Sa is inhalation. Ha is post-inhalative retention. O is post-inhalative retention. Ha is exhalative. Ma is post-exhalative retention. So there are four movements in pranayamic breath: inhalation, retention, exhalation, retention. So these are four parts. Sa, O, Ha, Ma. So these are the four uh, uh, matras, as it is called in Yoga Shastra, or four pieces: inhalative, retentive, exhalative, retentive. So
Mhm.
inhalative sound is Sa, retention is given to O, exhalation is Ha, and retention is Ma. So Sa, O, Ha, Ma, So, Ha. Sa, O, Ha, Ma. When conjoined, it becomes So, Hum. Now, this is the drone instrument within our heart. Now, suppose you are mentally chanting Om, Om in your meditation. When does the samadhi fructify? When does the samadhi actualize by your utterance of Om, either silently or mentally? Now, here I will bring the analogy. It is also explained in my book there. I will bring the analogy here. See, musician tunes one drone instrument. He tunes one drone instrument manually and then lays it on the floor. Picks up another drone instrument and again tunes it to same pitch. Now, when does he confirm that the tanpura in the hand, which is being plucked and tuned, when does he confirm that tanpura has been tuned properly? When he plucks the strings, the tanpura on the floor, which is not plucked, resonates. When the tanpura, which is not plucked, resonates, then that is assurance, or that is proof that the instrument which is being tuned in the hands has been tuned properly. Until that time, that tanpura won't resonate. When it matches the tuned tanpura and the tuning tanpura, when they are matching, then that is the proof. So similarly, yogi, when he takes recourse to Omkar Japa, so he starts doing it mentally, orally, silently, or whatever way. For meditation, he ultimately goes to silent utterance. He cannot be continue to orally utter, vocally utter, and expect meditation out of it. Now, when this Om, which is mentally uttered, chanted by yogi, if it matches the drone of the heart, so that starts resonating. When that starts resonating, his oral act can cease. And that's how he goes into samadhi. With oral act going on, you can't expect to be in samadhi. Mental act or oral act of Om, as long as it is continuing, there is no samadhi. How the samadhi will come about? So when yogis Om is cosmicalized, the Om which is in the heart, which is already cosmicalized, matches, and that starts resonating. So he gets the effect of utterance of Om without being uttered, either orally or silently. And that's called anahata sadhana. So in the heart, it is said that there is anahata Om going on. Anahata, unstruck sound. There is no striking for the sound in the heart. It is unstruck sound. That is why it is called anahata. And that is why the plexus there is called anahata chakra. Out of the 6 chakras, that is the heart region chakra called anahata. Anahata means sound without striking. Any instrument will produce sound when you strike it. Not having struck the instrument, it won't produce sound. So this instrument in the heart is going on continuously. 21,600 times there is Om going on per day, because there are 21,600 cycles per day. As the modern medicine says 15 cycles per minute, it also comes close to that. 15 cycles per minute. So in an hour, you can compute. In 24 hours, you can compute. So it comes to close to same figure, approximation to 21,600. So the Omkar Japa is going on in our hearts for 21,600 times per day. Now, when the yogi's Om matches because of his cosmicalized state of mind, then it is matching with the drone of the heart.
Mm.
And when it matches the drone of the heart, this ceases to be vibrated. You don't have to vibrate the hand talpura.
Mm.
So sometimes musicians take three, four, five tanpuras. You will not see this in West because they just come with one accompanist for tabla and one for tanpura. In India, these musicians keep more tanpuras. Sometimes four or five tanpuras are there. They create atmosphere. Now, all the four or five need not be played. If one is played, four or five kept on the ground will resonate because of the matching. So that's the anahata sadhana. So in yoga, we have anahata sadhana. And in a musician like Haridas, Purandardas, Tyagraj, or musicians of the lore, their singing matches with the divine qualities and divine attributes, divine characteristics. And that's how they get the divine experience within them. So that is the nada aspect. Now, nada doesn't have any English parallel. Dhvani is sound in Sanskrit. Dhvani is sound. Nada is effect of certain sounds within your system. The nadi system within you, neurological system within you, circulatory system within you, cellular system within you, when they resonate, then that is a yoga in music.
Oh.
So if a question is put, the uh, vocalist is not doing Shirshasana, not doing Sarvangasana, not doing in any asana, he's just seated and doing it. His system is in yoga. Like yogi doesn't get samadhi in Shirshasana or Urdhva Dhanurasana. He gets it in seated position. It is the internal constitution of yoga and not something extraneous and external that one is in Shirshasana, one is in Urdhva Dhanurasana. Samadhi won't happen there. For samadhi, it is the internal process.
Mhm.
So the Haridas and Purandardas or Tyagraj may be seated. They might be seated not perhaps in a precise asanic posture, like sitting erect, etc., spine erect, etc., chest open, etc., shoulders back, etc. But the internal system resonates, and that's why it is also yoga. So that's why there is a thick relationship between Nada Yoga. Now, for today's final statement, let me tell you this: when classical times, even about 300-400 years back, until that time, when the music was being trained, when the training was given in classical music, Shastriya Sangeet, they were not only taught Sare Gama Pada Nisa, they are called Swaras, they are called notes. So they were also taught Suras, Swara and Sura. That means they had to sing the same 7 notes or 12 notes in in A, in E, in U. Now, Western musicians also can try this. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. Sing them in only vowel vowel A, vowel E, vowel U, vowel A, I. So that becomes prana kriya.
Mm.
So it has been there traditionally that even in our music, we don't just sing the notes. We also have a form called sura. Swara are notes. Sare, gama, padani are swara. But are suras.
Mm.
So we are asked to practice the 7 notes in in A, in E, in U, A, I, O, Au, and Aha. Now, as I said in the last session, if you are having reservations to be singing loud because you think your voice is not sweet, if you open the mouth, your sweet voice or unsweet voice will become express. Don't open the mouth at all. Keep humming.
Mm.
Humming will never be jarring. If you open the mouth and produce letters and words, etc., or let lyricized songs, the songs are lyricized, and then your throat is used. So you require sweetness in the vocal system. But if you close your mouth and sing everything in so all the seven notes should be sung in nobody will have complaint that you have a bad voice. If you open the mouth, the voice becomes apparent and it becomes obvious.
Mhm.
So in our classical music, this is how it was trained. Then there are three octaves. Okay, for seven notes, there are three octaves: the lower octave, mid octave, and higher octave. So traditionally, the lower octave practices were suggested in early
Mm.
morning, when it is kapha time, it is phlegm time, and therefore they would be taking the students to a water body, a pond, a lake, a river. Already is early morning before dawn, 2 3 hours before dawn, and they will be made to be in water until throat, and then sing the seven notes on lower octave. So their voice culture takes place. Then for other octaves, they will come out of the water. For higher octave, the tradition suggests you must sing with the vowel E. E tapers, and you require a sharp sound when you go on higher octave, the third octave. When you go to third octave, you require a sharp sound. When you go to lower octave, you require a bass sound. Now, those who are familiar with the concepts of music, bass, treble, and soprano. Now, soprano is high pitch, and usually, therefore, women sing in soprano.
Mhm.
Baritone. So, you have baritone, you have bass, and you have soprano. So, for soprano, the students were taken to hilltop, out on the outskirts of the town, and they were made to sing in high pitch with a shout,
Mm.
so that the vocal cords will open out. They will be polished.
Mhm.
So higher octave, they said you must shout out the seven notes. For that purpose, they took out on the outskirts of the city, outskirts of the town. They took them on the hilltop, so others won't be disturbed. This was classical training. Today, it all takes place in perhaps air-conditioned rooms. And anytime. You decide the time schedule, you are scheduled in the morning, you go and learn in the morning. Somebody is scheduled in the evening, goes and learns the evening. This was not done in Gurukula.
Mm.
There are no batches, morning batch, noon batch, afternoon batch, evening batch, late evening batch. There were no batches. They were in the Gurukula. The Guru would be training them for their music.
Mm.
And the training also would circumscribe the vowels and consonants. And after they produced a note, they would say just silently allow it to resonate after your voice is over. Because uh, maybe when you have exhaled 50-60%, your voice goes away. You cannot produce sound after the incomplete exhalation is over. And the exhalation can further complete if you don't utter a sound. That's why I taught you that even in the classes I said, utter expressly. When the voice tapers and goes away, close your mouth. Continue uttering. So in both cases, you exhale and utter. Whether it is oral vocal utterance, you exhale, or silent utterance, you exhale. So in classical music, this pranayamic aspect was very much there long time back. Not today. Not in last 100, 200 years. It got extinct. Just as classical yoga is extinct and we have to revive it, the classical music or the Shastriya Sangeet needs a revival. All performing artists are Rajasic.
Mm.
The artists don't evolve. Audience might evolve. Those who listen to music will evolve. Performance of music don't evolve because they are in a profession, they are in business, they are in display, they are displaying their art, they are performing artists, they have showmanship. Artists will have to have showmanship. Otherwise, the artist won't be a performing artist at all. So showmanship is Rajoguna. And therefore, most of the musicians are generating Rajoguna and Taboguna even. And therefore, Sattva-guna will be strangulated. While in our traditional music of lore, it was for divinity. So Sattva-guna got exuberance. Rajata-guna were sanitized. And today's musicians, they sanitize the Sattva-guna, drive away the Sattva-guna, and they give encouragement to Rajoguna. And that's why it is not a divine art. Being an art, it cannot be divine art. Other arts can be divine, such as sculptures. Even in sculpturing, those who carved the temples, they were divine. But those are in the profession of sculpturing cannot be divine. So anyway, so today I want to make this concluding statement that I've given some opening for one to understand how there is spiritual essence in Shastriya Sangeet and there is no spiritual touch. If at all it is claimed, it is pseudo. Musicians say our music is spiritual. These are all performers. They all have commercial minds. And therefore, what we have today as exposition to Indian classical music, there is a mutiny. Just as in yoga, there is a mutiny to very great extent.
Mhm.
So what we need to do in yoga, we need to do in our Sangeet as well. Sangeet has become an art and it has not become, it has not remained a spiritual endeavor. So I think that should be enough for the day. So
Thank you.
namaskar all.
Namaskar. I hope you enjoyed this episode of On the Light. To close today's conversation, I'm going to read, or perhaps attempt to read, you'll know why I'm saying that here in a moment, another excerpt from the Yoga Rahasya article that inspired this discussion on Sangeet. At the point at which the mind matches that interior I myself, Soham, it will have been attuned. That is why this ultimate accordance is described in terms of a primal non-discordance, an unstruck or unsounded sound that is ever yet a sound, anahata. Paradoxically, as an accordant non-discordance, anahata nada, an accord accorded to us once discord has been dispelled, a double negation of sound. Anahata nada, that primal inner accord which is accorded to us by the unsounded sound of our unplumbed depths. Having consummated a gradual process of purification, our mental procedures of incantation begin to resonate with that inner tambura. Let's reflect a while on this aspect of accordance, nada, which our adhyatma delineates after the manner of mystic speech. Okay, I hope that offers you something to sit with and contemplate. Please stay tuned for next week's episode when I'll be joined by Lois Steinberg. If you enjoy On the Light, please consider liking, sharing, or subscribing. And if you're able, a small monthly donation helps support the continued production of this podcast. Thank you for listening. Namaskar.